Joining us now, Rishi Jaluria, DA Davidson senior analyst. Rishi, thanks so much for joining us. I mean, clearly a bit of a beat on both lines, a big move lower in the stock price. Is that because investors had started to hope the numbers would be as good as the likes of Zoom?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I think that's exactly it, right? Like, we see this bifurcation in work from home names, where on one hand you have Zoom putting up a historic quarter, you have Docusign seeing a big acceleration, and then on the other hand, Slack is, I think, still a work from home beneficiary, but I compare it to Slack is more of a dimmer versus a light switch. It's not an immediate impact like you're seeing with Zoom, because you're not replacing things physically and forcing to do this, right? This is ultimately a replacement for email. And a lot of companies that are even, 6 months into work from home are fine using email and don't require channel-based real-time communication. I think the longer this goes on, the more that works in Slack's favor. But I think that's exactly it. A lot of investors had hoped that there would be an acceleration and pull forward, and that just hasn't played out.
Is this a potential case where, in fact, work from home has hurt Slack? Not so much that outright it's hurt them, but that it may have acted as a bit of a benefit to the likes of Microsoft, where people who were only using Microsoft before have started using other rival services that Microsoft can offer them that have kind of meant they've never tried Slack in a way that perhaps they might have done if there hadn't been such a rush to having these types of services.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it shows in the numbers, right? If you look at the usage growth and user growth from Microsoft Teams, it's been astronomical. I think if I were to say what's the more constructive way to think about this is, remember, this is a very kind of greenfield space, right? You have to evangelize the market of why go to something new like this. And maybe we're in a case where all the heavy lifting has been done by Microsoft because you have shops that have never used any solution like this before, and now they're experimenting with Teams, they're experimenting with real-time messaging, and maybe that actually presents an opportunity for Slack as things kind of start to get back to normal and companies can think about replacements to say, hey, now that you understand the value of this, Slack, we have a way better product, here's why you should switch over to us. But I think that's absolutely a fair point that in the near term, maybe it is a little bit of a headwind.
But if this is not the acceleration, Rishi, that the market expected, that Slack and investors expected, I mean, it's even the opposite of that. The company is saying that not only did things not accelerate in the way that perhaps people had hoped, but that they also saw some detrimental impact from layoffs at companies where they had a strong customer base. So I'm curious how you see the overall economy impacting this company, and the fact that unemployment is still elevated, and the fact that maybe some customers of Slack's are feeling that pinch too.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely a major factor here, right? You're in a situation where Slack, for the fact that it is, increasingly moving at larger customers, still has a lot of small customers and startups and SMBs, and absolutely with headcount and with kind of pinch on budgets, that is weighing against Slack. And so that is absolutely another near-term headwind that they're facing. And I think at this point, it's really up to Slack to overcome that by having a strong product, by focusing on customer success, so that that's not a kind of permanent headwind that they're facing.
Rishi, does their antitrust complaint in the EU have legs? And either way, does it make a difference for the US?
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, and part of the reason, obviously, they did in the EU is way stricter about this than the U.S. is. Look, my take is I think it's more of a kind of marketing sort of move versus anything else, right? I don't think Microsoft is going to be forced to sell Teams as a standalone product when it's so well integrated with the Microsoft Office suite. And I think in contrast to the Microsoft of 20 years ago, Microsoft Teams works with everyone else. It works with Dropbox, it works with Zoom, even though both of those are competitors. So it's harder to make an antitrust case. I think the upside for Slack is that it makes customers think a little bit more critically about their reliance on Microsoft, about how much they're using it, about the vendor lock-in. And maybe this image of a kinder, gentler Microsoft under Satya Nadella isn't quite true, right? I mean, they weren't at the antitrust hearings, although all the other big tech companies were. And maybe, again, from Slack's perspective, it's more of a marketing thing versus a serious, hey, this is going to have business implications.